Family 3 when it went to Daryl Hannah?
I don't know what happened with Addams Family 3, I guess. I don't know. Did she do it?
Did it?
I don't know. It wasn't with the same group. Scott Rudin was the brilliant producer behind Addams Family 1 and 2, and Barry Sonnenfeld, the director, and I think what they did was so beautifully done. It would be very hard to duplicate the kind of care and trouble they took with those movies. The Witches was such a great subversive film. I was offered a development deal at MGM after Preetzi's Honor, and I kept trying to get them to read scripts that I had and talk to me about ideas that I had, and then it became evident that they had one idea, and that was Roald Dahl's The Witches, which they asked me to do with Nick Roeg. When I heard it was going to be Nick Roeg, I was very excited because I loved his movies Don't Look Now, and I'd seen his movie Eureka. I thought he was a unique filmmaker. So I went to London. It was a Henson production, and Jim Henson's workshop was in Hampstead, and there were all these kind of brilliant nerds doing clockwork pieces with little mice, and that was interesting. And then the makeup began, and there were unbelievably complicated prosthetics, whole headpieces and humps. It took about 7 hours to put on the prosthesis and 3 hours to take it off, which was a lot. For about 3 weeks, that's how I lived, incarcerated in rubber. And the hands, they created these hands where the tips of my fingers were the knuckles of the hands. But you couldn't take them off to go to the loo or anything because it would be an hour to put them back on. So my assistant had to pull down my tights, traipse off into the loo, and come back, and she'd pull them back out, and that was my life for 3 weeks. And I had contact lenses of various sizes and apertures, and those were problematic because I couldn't touch them myself because of the hands, and they had this guy who they call an eye expert. And so that wasn't too great. I got scratched retinas and everything, and they kept pumping this green smoke into my face, and then the contact lenses would turn green, and I'd think I was blind, but then I wasn't, so it was okay. But at the same time, I knew we were making something totally unique, something really, it was a kid's movie, but it was a dangerous kid's movie. There were little elements that were so Nick, and I knew that I was basically playing Hitler. That's who the Grand High Witch is. And so that's an interesting character to play.
Are kids still scared of you?
Yeah, they are. I still see them on the street, like in London when I'm there. There'll be some. And now they're older. Now they're like 28. And they're looking at me. Witches fan. He wanted me to be in Captain EO. It was a 3-week job that was basically going to be a ride in Disneyland, and the story was kind of a video format. It was before videos became so ubiquitous. It was basically the storyline was Michael Jackson comes to my hideous planet. I play I don't know, the Grand High Leader. I'm always the Grand High Witch and Grand High Leader. Anyway, I'm strung up on the ceiling, and I come down and torture him, and then he sings to me and transforms my planet, and all is well. And it was great because, again, it was a lot of prosthetics and makeup, and this time I'm kind of strung up to the ceiling, which was hard on the back, particularly when Elizabeth Taylor came to visit Michael Jackson, and she was like, "Oh, Michael, why didn't you ask me to play the Grand High Leader?" I've heard nothing all her life but how awful her back was because she fell off her horse on National Velvet. And she's going, "Oh, I could do that." But anyway, I liked working with Michael. He couldn't show anger in rehearsal. It was the thing that struck me the most. It was like, I would try to, actually Francis and I were both urging him to kind of show fight back. No. And his voice would just get higher. "Oh, be gone from my planet, from your planet." But there was one day when they had me come in really early, like 5 o'clock in the morning, and the camera was going to be on Michael, and it was a 3D camera. So the lens was wider than the distance between you and I. It made no difference whether I was there or not, because if he were to be looking at me, he'd be in full profile because of the size of the camera lens. So I was feeling a bit, over it, particularly when he asked me to be in full makeup. The full thing with the coils and the rubber and then strung up on the ceiling. Really over it. And they put him on a hydraulic platform, and he starts to sing because he's going to transform my world. And all of a sudden I was like, my jaw dropped. He was unbelievable. He was magic. And the minute he started singing and dancing, this power came out of him. It was like lightning bolts. You could see an aura around him. I literally was speechless. I couldn't, I was blown away. He was a genius. He was a genius.
And I mentioned before about your extension, and you are the daughter of a ballerina. And I can't believe I've never asked you this before. I've known you for so long. Did you ever take any ballet classes when you were a child? Did you? Because nobody can stand like that without, a real understanding of the thread, I mean, your posture, your eloquence with your movement. I think you're one of the most beautifully moving actresses in the world, I mean, and I think that probably has a lot to do with your mother on some level, no? Because we hear you talk about your dad a lot, but I mean, I want to hear a little bit about your mother and her effect on you.
My mother was a very beautiful woman, whose father was a yogi, actually. He'd come over to America in his 30s from Italy and taken up yoga, and I think he was quite hard on her, and when she proclaimed that she wanted to be a ballet dancer, he had her study at the New York City Ballet, and finally she became a dancer under Balanchine and danced with Jerome Robbins and had a fantastic career until she met my father and gave it all up, and had babies. But I remember dancing with my mother when I was a very small child. We'd go out to Grandpa's house in Long Island and we'd dance on the sand together. We'd make these big branchetés. And then when I was in Ireland, she used to dance with me there. But but there were no ballet schools, so I did Irish dancing, which is very quite stiff. You have lots of curls, but that came later when you go to these feshes in the countryside, and you have to kind of make your own costume and sew your medals on and everything. But I was always quite active, and I always had some sort of poise, I guess. And then when I went to London, again, I always danced. I always went to ballet class, and then I just loved dancing in general. I was always out dancing in clubs as soon as I was able, as soon as they let me. So yeah, I danced all my life. And I love to ice skate too, and ski and ride horses, so I always had good balance. Mia Farrow did it with Brian Dennehy, do it. And I have a movie that's going to come out at some point called Master Plans, that's a kind of subversive movie. It should be fun. And that's my immediate plan.